This episode is sponsored by Cocatel Collective, a strategic sales and marketing agency representing a highly curated portfolio of emerging beverage brands, from premium all-natural sodas, wine spritzes, and spirits all around the world.
Welcome to the In Process podcast, where we share stories of resilience and passion. We're excited that you found our YouTube channel, and we'd love to hear from you. So be sure to comment below and hit that like button. If you're enjoying these stories, be sure to subscribe and share. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to this episode of In Process. I'm Mary.
And I'm Anjo.
And today we are excited to introduce a local potter, designer, and owner. You may have seen her pieces this year at the Color Club or this holiday season in the Eater gift guide from Monsoon Pottery. Let's welcome Danielle Chutinthranond to the show. All right, so we're going to start easy. How's your day been so far?
Short. I don't get up that early normally, so I tend to work pretty late. So
Yeah.
I just
Like
got
how-
up and
how
came
late?
over here. Like pretty late sometimes. Like this time of year, I've been in the studio until like 1:30 or 2 in the morning, and then I like need some time to come down, and so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard cutoff at 4 though. If it's not lights out by 4, then that's when you start sliding down the slope.
Yeah.
You're like,
Can we
I'm
get the
never
microphone
leaving.
just a little closer?
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's okay if it's like a little off. It's pretty.
Like a little off the table.
Yeah.
And are you a caffeine drinker at all in the morning?
Usually yes, but today no.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Awesome. So we're just going to start kind of from the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in Syracuse, New York, so central New York. It's like right in the middle of New York State. New York's a really big state,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. And you ended up in Chicago. When did you end up coming to Chicago?
I moved to Chicago when I was 18. I came here for college.
Okay.
I went to University of Chicago, and I just stayed.
You stayed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I want to go back a little bit to New York because I know that your parents own a restaurant.
Yeah.
Lemongrass.
Yeah.
Awesome. I want to know more about the upbringing of
Oh
that.
my God. Yeah. So that wasn't even their first restaurant. They immigrated here basically right before I was born. And then we were living in Ithaca. And so they had a Thai restaurant there with my dad's brothers. It was called Thai Cuisine. Really creative. And then we moved to Syracuse probably when I was like 4 or 5. I don't know how old I was. But yeah, they opened another restaurant called the Authentic Thai Restaurant of Mattydale, which is like, it's like a township outside Syracuse. That's where our first restaurant was. And that was like in a former funeral home, which is like, I have a lot of stories from that restaurant because it was kind of haunted. We got like a monk to come in, do an exorcism, everything. Like some ghosts got to stay, most had to leave. But yeah, it's a whole thing. But then they moved downtown in, I don't remember when. I think it might have been 1993, maybe? I don't know. My dad's going to get really mad if I get the date wrong. But they've been in downtown Syracuse for like 30 years, over 30 years. But yeah, I grew up like working in the kitchen and taking coats and just like working summers and, sometimes just weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it mostly family working in the restaurant? Like, was it kind of that vibe?
It's always been kind of a larger restaurant. Like the first iteration of the Lemongrass, I think seated, well, definitely over 100 people, but then they opened a sister restaurant and then expanded into that space. So like, I think just maybe over like 180 or 200 people. And then they recently got kind of pushed out of the space that they had been in for about 30 years because of a new landlord that came in, but they luckily had already bought the building next door. And then they kind of did this other restaurant in that building to do like parties and stuff, private parties and banquets and weddings and all that stuff. And so when they had to move their flagship restaurant in there and have that be their only restaurant, now it seats like 300 something. So like they could do like 800 a day during like graduation weekend, which is like the busiest weekend in Syracuse.
That's awesome.
I mean, it is and it isn't. It's like a different ball game, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could handle like 800 covers a day.
Yeah,
Seems like
it
a
changes the menu, it changes the format a little bit, but they've made it work, and the restaurant's like more popular than it's ever been, which is awesome. But my parents are, you know, past retirement age, but they, I don't. At least my dad loves to work at the restaurant, and so I don't know what he would do without it.
Yeah, that's like his everyday life. That's like Thomas's mom. She retired and then she's not retired now, and like her like passion project is the cafe.
Oh, nice.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh, she's working so hard.
Is the cafe here in Chicago?
It is in the north side, like northwest suburbs. So it's in Park Ridge.
Oh my God, what kind of cafe is
But
it?
like the same thing also too, like growing up, it was called the Korean restaurant, which I was like.
And it was named after another restaurant called Korean restaurant,
it's
right?
a restaurant that she grew up going to in Jeonju in Korea, called Hanggukan, which is Korean restaurant, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like these understated descriptive names.
It's a SEO Yellow Book page, incredible.
Yes.
It's very smart. Yeah.
Maybe that's what the thinking was
Yeah.
behind it.
is
Was
smart.
a
Phone
yellow
book.
page.
You open the phone book and there it is.
Oh my gosh. I haven't thought about a phone book in
Yeah.
how many years?
Okay, this is making a lot more sense.
And I've met
Blew my
her
mind.
father here at the restaurant, and he's the sweetest man in the world. So
Oh,
he like wanted the chopsticks too, right? It was,
oh my, yeah. They were psyched to be here. They were just, you know, so tickled that they could order a ribeye decal and, you know, not the whole ribeye.
Yes, they know that's Spinalis.
Yeah, that's my mom's favorite cut of the ribeye.
Everybody's favorite.
Yeah. She's like, I'll just take that part. You guys have the rest. Of the ribeye. You guys have the best. Okay, so you grew up in a restaurant. So I saw your Instagram, and I know you love food. I'm like creeping you. I'm like, oh my God. It's like Thomas is all food.
Oh, yeah. I'm obsessed with food. I've always been obsessed with food, but, you know, I come from a restaurant family, and then my parents are workaholics and stuff, and so, you know, they rarely took any time off.
Yeah.
Like, we never had a vacation really, like where we flew somewhere. We went to Thailand maybe once or twice when I was a kid, but usually it was when someone died.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, we mostly just kind of drove for a weekend somewhere, and Syracuse is basically in the middle between Toronto and New York City. And my dad loves Chinese food, like loves Chinese food. And so we were always going on these dim sum expeditions. So yeah, anytime we went anywhere, the whole focus was we are going here to try different foods and to eat at restaurants for research.
Love that.
And yeah, so I just kind of grew up in a very food-centric worldview of not like, what are we going to do? But
What are we gonna eat?
what are we going to eat? And then as we're eating, we're like, okay, so what are we going to eat next?
What's for dinner?
Yeah.
Let's plan it ahead.
Right.
So having grown up surrounded by so much food and love of food, did you ever think you would end up in restaurants? Did you ever want to pursue something in food, or was it just kind of something like a lifestyle?
It was definitely a lifestyle. Growing up, I really did want to work in restaurants and like be a chef and everything. But like that was absolutely something that when, you know, I was growing up in the restaurant that both my parents were very much like, you are not going to do this.
Yeah.
This is not an option for you. You're going to go to college. And by the way, they went to college too, but like, whatever. They're like, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a high paying job, and you're going to have a nice, easy life. And so I just felt like it was totally off limits. And, you know, I went to college and I graduated in 2008. And so when I did get a corporate job out of college, I felt really lucky because, you know, not everyone was offering jobs still. And some people who got job offers, some of my friends, like, their offers were rescinded. And so, like, to be working during the recession, I was like, okay, let's just, like, chill out.
Yeah.
Let's just just be grateful for what we
Exactly.
have. It's not a good fit, but yeah, I would host these insane dinner parties at my house, and yeah, it was fun. But I think for a while I thought maybe I wanted to go to culinary school, and then I saw what they were teaching at culinary school, and I was like, I'm not really into French food, and like it just didn't seem like that was a good match either. And so I just kind of kept working and had food as more of like a recreation. and
Yeah, like
interest.
hobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you studied physics?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't
yeah.
even know what physics is. What? I don't.
It's the study of the natural world. Like it's how everything makes sense, I guess, is how I looked at it.
Does it make sense?
Not really. There's huge discrepancies.
Yeah, I'm
There's-
like, "Ooh."
yeah.
So
Yeah.
physics, and then you were a software engineer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then was there something after that between?
Well, I worked in tech for like 7 or 8 years, and like I came into it doing software engineering. Like I learned how to do that on the job, and then I was like, okay, this is fine, but I'm more interested in aesthetics, and I really just kind of lobbied for myself to work on pieces of code that translated into things that people would see on the screen. So I did like web design and stuff, and then I was trying to transition through the entirety of my tech career from being a programmer to being a user experience designer and researcher. Because I feel like I also liked asking questions and figuring out how to ask the right question and not a leading question, and like just kind of figuring out how to assess if what we had built had actually worked. And so I feel like, yeah, maybe there's like some similarities there between like my science background and stuff, because it is kind of like a methodological approach.
Right.
Yeah, I was just learning about that recently, and it's user or UX. Is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
yeah.
And I love that you say that, because I feel like now it's like more relative to what you do. But yeah, you're creating how people are gonna feel
Yeah.
when they like go to your website.
Yeah, and you know, when I was in that field, I really thought that the emotional aspect was very important. And you know, there was this book called like Designing for Emotion that I was obsessed with, and it was about web design though, and it was about branding and all this stuff. But you know, taking that mindset to a tech company like, I don't know, like 10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, UX didn't always exist, and that's what's so
Right.
interesting too, to see how tech, I mean, has the transition of it all. Like now you can major. For a while, I feel like so many people, that's kind of what they were going for, but there wasn't a name or a title for it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's only been, gosh, yeah, in the last 10 years that UX really kind of exploded.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was exploding when I kind of got out of it. There were some programs like coding schools and academies, and like I think Stanford had like human-centered design that everyone was kind of looking to, and yeah, there wasn't like a degree program by the time I left. But yeah, it was like a little niche that I found interesting to me in that industry. So
And that led you to, where did we, how are we getting to?
how are we getting to
Yeah.
ceramics? Yeah. Yeah, the last job I had was I was working at a startup, and I was just getting paid way too little for how much I was working, and I just kind of imploded. Like all the forces of tech kind of collapsed in on me, like, you know, like a dying star, and like just like I just couldn't take it anymore. So I left, and I was totally burned out. And yeah, I decided I was going to take a year off. I found a couple of freelance clients. Like Squarespace had been a thing for a little bit, not that long.
Yeah.
So you could still charge people a fair amount of money just to put together a Squarespace website for them.
Wow.
And so that's how I was making money for like the year that I was taking off.
Yeah.
And I just kind of Yeah, I just slept a lot. I read a lot. And then I was like, all right, let me just try to do something a little bit more constructive with my time. And I found a class at Lil Street, which is a pottery studio in Ravenswood here in Chicago. And I took a clay class there, and I just loved it.
Amazing. And how long ago was this?
Like 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It was like the moment I touched clay, I was just like, oh, okay. Like, this makes sense to me, even though I couldn't really do anything. I mean, it takes a lot of practice to learn how to throw consistently on the wheel. But I just knew from that first class that I was like, oh, I'm going to try to get good at this. Yeah. Like, and I don't have a problem being bad at something for a really long time. And so I like building new skills, and it's always been part of my personality. So it was a really good way to occupy my time, which I suddenly had a lot of. And it was a great way to sort of process everything that had happened with, leaving a career. And at that point, I didn't know I was going to leave it completely behind, but that was an option for me at the time, was to just leave.
Yeah.
So yeah, I took that class, and I just, I don't know if it's like this now, but when you take the class there, and you pay for the class, like, you can go to Open Studio between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. And so I would just spend all day trying to get better at throwing pots. And I eventually became a monitor there, which means that you do a task in the studio to help keep it up. And then they give you like this little shelf, and you don't have to pay for the class. And well, you don't go to a class unless you want to, but and then I was making glazes there for the whole studio, and it's a big studio. I was like, the glaze buckets were like, I don't know what, number of gallons the trash can is. It's like this tall, but I was emptying like 50-pound bags of chem into this trash can. And, like that was like part of one ingredient that had to go in. So, but I did that job because when you're at a studio like that, they just obscure the end of the process for me. You can learn how to throw clay, and like you just kind of put it on a shelf when you're done, and then they fire it and bring it back to you. You dip it in glazes that they provide, and then you put it on the shelf again, and then it disappears. And after a while, I was just like, okay, what's happening? On the other side, like, I just need to know. And so I was like, okay, I'll work here for free, and like I'll learn how to mix glazes. I want to learn about glaze chemistry. That's not something that they offer at studios, really. It's not something that it's just a part of the process that they don't expose people intentionally, just to keep studio operations simple. But like I just wanted to know everything.
Yeah. How did you know that you wanted to leave tech and pursue art, or this version of art?
I don't think I knew I wanted to leave tech. I think I just knew I couldn't take it anymore. There wasn't a plan.
Yeah, you were just like, I'm done with this.
I was like, I can't do this right now. I just can't do this anymore. I don't know. And just the environment was not right for me. I don't know how it is now, but when I was there, it's just like toxically pretty masculine, and there's like a work hard, play hard culture that's a little toxic. And it's like, if you don't go out to drinks with everybody, or start drinking or start cracking beers at like 4 p.m. or something, and like be a part of that, then people are not as like warm to you at work, or and there's just like a lot of ego stuff that you have to deal with daily, and I just don't really do well with that.
No.
Like
and like I've watched the Korean dramas, and they talk about that a lot, where it's like, if you don't go, or they don't talk in my mind, that's how I'm narrating it, but they're like, if you don't go out to drink until like 2 a.m. with your boss, like, you're missing out on these connections,
right?
And like, then you're just gonna not understand any of the jokes when everyone comes into the office, and you're just gonna be like kind of the odd man out.
Yeah, and like I think there's a certain bonding, and it's like, if people know that you're not down for that, then it's you're kind of like on the outside then. But I was just waking up every morning, reading my inbox, responding to emails as I was lying in bed, and then going to like commuting downtown, going to work, and like working all day, going out, and then like, you know, right before I went to bed, I was like responding to emails too, and just it was rinse and repeat, and I was just like, this is so boring.
Yeah.
I'm so bored with this. And yeah, I think I just got a little disillusioned, especially working at a startup, because it's usually some person's vision to, you know, change the world, and it's almost never what you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
So
So did you end up learning a lot of the techniques and about clay, all of those things? The first step was definitely at this first studio and through the class.
Yeah.
Were there other resources you started to look to as you got more serious? And
Definitely. I love books. I love YouTube.
yeah.
The instructors at Lowell Street are amazing, and there was one instructor I had who I kept taking her classes. Her name's Susan Messer-McBride, and she's an amazing ceramic artist, and she also has a teaching background. And so when I met her and was really enthusiastic about clay and just kept asking questions, like, I'm definitely that person in a class. He's like, okay, so like I have one more question. Like, oh, and so then like when you do this, like, and I was like, so this glaze doesn't look exactly, I was like, can we make it shiny somehow? And then she did not have to do this, but, you know, she showed me like a stall chart, which is like kind of, it helps you formulate like how glazes are supposed to turn out. And so she's like, okay, so this is where you are on the chart, and like this is where you want to be, and like this is, and you know, that's kind of the gateway into me becoming a glaze monitor at Lowell Street. And she's just so awesome, and I just wanted to learn absolutely everything. And I think that was a huge part of it, was just kind of finding the right person who was like not annoyed with me, who was excited that I
To share all that she knows. You're like, I want to know everything.
Yeah, I did want to know everything, and I still want to know everything. And I think that's what's exciting about clay to me, is that I don't think I can know everything, and there's just so many facets of the craft that you could spend your entire life in. And so, like, I just feel like it's going to hold my interest, because there's always going to be more. There's always going to be way more than I can know.
So to get into a little bit of basics
Yes.
for our listeners and for Andrew and I, who don't know a ton about
Sure.
pottery and ceramics and firing, could you give us like a 101, a walkthrough on, like, maybe let's start with firing, wood firing, gas firing.
I mean, I feel like I would end with firing.
Okay,
But
we'll start
yeah, most of how you might be exposed to clay in a studio is you would get there, they would provide you with clay. It's probably been mixed by some company, and you just use that clay in the studio, and you can hand build it or wheel throw it, and then it dries to a certain point, and you can like then finish it with details, and then after that you want to just leave it to dry completely. You want no water in the clay whatsoever. And then it goes through a first firing, which is a bisque firing, and basically what it does is it solidifies it, so it's like, and makes it porous, so that it's easy to handle, because when clay is super dry and not fired yet, if you try to pick it up, like, you can break it really easily. Okay. So like, and it makes it porous so that when you dip it in glaze or brush it with glaze, that it's ready to accept that moisture. And then after that, you put it into a glaze firing, and then that's when the glaze and the clay come to a temperature where it's like vitrifying and turning the clay and the glaze into, like, there's a glass layer basically on the outside of the clay.
That's like protecting everything.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's like a impermeable seal
And
around
then
it.
porcelain is a type of clay?
Yes.
And is it just porcelain in that mix, or is it also mixed with other?
What mix?
The clay mix?
Oh, I mean, there's just different types of clay.
Am I right?
Yeah, there's just different types of clay that you can use. Porcelain is one type of clay. You can use stoneware, and stoneware comes in like a million different iterations. I mean, there's technical differences between porcelain, but porcelain is like white clay that's very high in kaolin, which is just like pure clay, basically, and it's a white clay, and it's just got a higher percentage, and then it has no grog. And so what grog is it's almost like scaffolding in clay. Stoneware has grog. It's fired clay that's been pulverized and then remixed into fresh clay. And so it makes it easier to, like build bigger, or they tend to start beginners with stoneware because it's easier to work on it for a long time without it getting fatigued and collapsing. And so like stoneware just has grog, and most stoneware has grog. Some of it doesn't, but porcelain never really has grog in it. So, yeah.
So it's harder to form, or you have to be a little bit quicker with it?
Yes and no. I don't know. I kind of like stray away from these stereotypes of like porcelain being harder. It's just different. It's a different clay body, and like people always come up to me at like studio sales or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, I'm like taking a class and I really want to try porcelain, but you know, my instructor says I'm not ready, or like I heard it's really hard." And I'm like, it's just different. Like,
because I'm scared of it.
Are you?
Like holding it. And I think that's like something that I wanted to know. I think growing up, my grandma had like porcelain plates, and it was in the cabinet, like the glass cabinet. And she was like, it's only for special occasions. And it's like never came out.
Yeah.
No occasion. Did it ever come out?
Yeah, I'm so against that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, if you have nice things, use them all of the time. Like, you made the investment, like, just use it. It's supposed to make your life better.
Yeah. So what do people need to know about porcelain? Like, how can they not be scared to like use it for food?
Oh, you're scared to use it for food?
I think anything.
Really?
Yeah. Like I have.
Oh my God, no. Porcelain is the shit. It's like if you're talking about like durability and sanitation, and like it's like the strongest clay. So that's like one of the reasons I like to use it too, is because I'm a big believer in form and function. And so like if I knew I kind of wanted to have the option to work with restaurants when I started doing this, and that was one of the many reasons why I chose porcelain, is because its durability is just unmatched. Its absorption rate is like, that's how you sort of measure durability. It's how much water a clay will absorb after it's been fired. Like stonewares like I've seen stonewares with absorption rates that are like 12%, 13%. Like porcelain is under 1%. Like the porcelain I use, I test it like once a year, but you can test absorption rate by making a tile, weighing it, soaking it in water, and then weighing it again, and then seeing the percent increase. You need a really sensitive scale. But yeah, I measure it every year. It's like 0.3% absorption. It's very low. And so what that's telling you is that it's impervious to outside elements. So you're just not, it's not going to wear down over time. Like if you think of a terracotta pot, that has a lifespan that's shorter than ours.
Yeah.
But if you think of a porcelain pot, like there's some in the Met that have, that are like 1,000 years old.
So can I ask, Danielle, I feel like, first of all, her website is beautiful. It's well written. And when we were Anjo and I were talking about it a little bit, you definitely have a strong like philosophy, being functional and beautiful. Some of the words I think you used were useful, beautiful, something to be inherited for generations.
Yes.
What were some of the things that kind of shaped this philosophy for you?
Well, I think my parents are like pretty into art. Like my dad's into paintings and stuff like that. And so he's interested in like collecting paintings from Thailand, and just kind of seeing how they value art or how they want to be surrounded with beautiful things. Like now all their plateware is like my plateware.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, because just like, there's a steady stream just coming to them. But yeah, they use all of it. And yeah, I think I just inherited that philosophy from them, and to just understand that luxury is not something that has to be limited to a special day or a special occasion, because like you never know how long you're gonna live. And so like you just should use the nicest things that you can while you can, and you get to live this beautiful life. And to buy like a set of plates and use them once a year, like, what are you doing?
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, I really love that you say that too, because I think it's a way to live almost. And
It is.
I mean, okay, I used to be really notorious for like, I would get something special for my birthday and be like, oh, I have to use this for something special. And it'd be ridiculous. I'd get like gift cards and I'd never use them because I was like, oh, it wasn't special enough. And so stupid. It's so stupid. This is like 10
Lost
years
the
ago.
gift card.
But no, I still have them and they're expired, or like the restaurant went out of business, all these things. But just this idea that like, like why would you not live your life? Why would you not use this beautiful thing? And I think for like I can totally resonate with Anjo when she was talking about her grandma's porcelain cabinet, like and the plates that she used once a year. But I almost think there's this idea of like you're worried you're gonna break it.
It's a scarcity mindset.
Yeah. And so I think just this sense
yeah.
of like durability and wanting to create these beautiful but durable things, I really love that.
Yeah. And
Thanks.
hearing that is so beautiful, because I think it's so nice to like learn that from somebody else, like your family, because my family wasn't into art, but they definitely have that mindset where it's like, hold on to everything, like even like a Tupperware.
Right.
I'm like, throw the Tupperware away. Like,
Yeah.
No, never.
you know what I mean?
Never do that.
But it's just like, as I grow older, wiser, I want to adopt that mindset of like, have like a couple nice things that really bring you joy, and just like feel good, like holding the bowl.
Yeah, I mean, and on that note too, it's just that when you buy something that's really nice and special, you don't need as many things, because then you just use those things, and then if you do break it, you get to buy something new. And like I have like some plastic cups at my house, but like I just don't want to use them. They just don't have. I mean, and with a handmade good too, made by a person, made by someone with intention, you can feel that in the piece, or at least I can. It feels like there's an electricity inside the piece that is conducted, and it's that human connection that you don't get from something that's mass manufactured. When I pick up a plate from IKEA or Crate and Barrel, I literally can feel how dead it is inside.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is dead inside. I don't want to use this. It just doesn't.
Like even the weight to it, there's, I feel like with a little bit of weight, there's like warmth in my hand. And then when it's very light, it just almost feels like just throw it. Like,
I do make a lot of really light pots.
oh, where are they?
No, but I mean, the weight is always a consideration, just depending on what you're making too.
Yeah.
And so like when I got into teaware, I really made a lot of my pots lighter, because that's kind of a tenet of teaware. And like I got too thin at one point, and I like scaled back, because I was like, no, I actually don't even like this. I feel like the tea's not brewing right, because it's like losing too much heat too fast. And I was like, all right, there's like a very specific thickness to every gaiwan I make, for example.
Will you tell us a little bit?
Thick at the bottom and then like thinner at the rim. But I mean, it's almost imperceptible. It's just, But a gaiwan is a Chinese tea brewing vessel. It's this lidded vessel in front of me. It's 2 or 3 pieces. It literally means like a lidded cup. And you put the loose leaf tea leaves inside, and it's usually a high volume of tea to a relatively low volume of water compared to Western brewing style. And then you use the lid on the cup to just angle it, and then, you can strain the tea out of the cup. And then the idea is to do multiple steeps, because then every steep is a little bit different, and they're way shorter than like a Western steep. And so I got really into these, and like I was tuning my thicknesses for the last like year and a half. And so, as I learned more about tea, had a tea practice of my own, I just kind of, thickness is a weird thing. It's a weird thing. I don't like a pot that's too heavy too, and it's just like if you have a plate that has some heft, I like that, but you know, I make these huge ramen bowls, and the idea is to have like an entire meal of soup inside the bowl. And if you're going to fill it to the top and it's already really big, it's going to get so heavy when you're actually using it that I've gotten conscious about taking weight away from that form. And so it's like, it's all on a case by case basis.
That makes sense. Because, like, also if it's in a restaurant, people are running it.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had a bowl that was, not this one, but was so heavy just by itself.
Yeah.
And then you have to hold like 4 or 5 of them on a tray. And it's like,
Yeah, but the thicker, heavier pots don't break as easy. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
situational.
Yeah, when I make stuff for restaurants, though, I still don't make it that thick because I'm just like, this is not my work. I just don't. I feel a certain way about it. And if it breaks, they just got to be more careful with it. Like, I don't know what to say, but I'm just like, I'm not going to make a super heavy thing just for the sole
Durability.
purpose of having it. Because, it gets banged around a lot more. You're, like, throwing it into bus bins and, like, you know, other stuff is in between it. And, but, yeah, there's, like, a certain line I won't cross when it comes to, like, making my work. And, you know, sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing.
Do you do a lot of collaborations?
I did more this year. I did a couple restaurant projects this year. And, yeah, I've done some in the past. Like, I think for me, it's just finding the right collaborators is always at the top of mind for me because, you know, I didn't leave a career where I had a boss and, like, I had hours and, like, I had to show up for things in order to in order to allow other people to impose those same things on me. And so I'm very mindful of, like, okay, there are benefits to doing this. Like, it's really hard to make a living making pots, but I have to prioritize the reasons why I got into it. And that includes not saying yes to every single thing. And usually where I draw the line is, like, people who come to me and they're like, oh, I really want this specific thing and I need it to look this way and it needs to be glazed in this way, which is, you know, formulating glaze is like a whole nother thing too. And like, oh, I need to be able to approve the design before, like, we go forward. And
Like a manufacturer, like I need these specs perfect.
basically, like, I become a manufacturer. I'm no longer an artist.
Yeah.
And that's usually where I'm like, I'm not going to do this. Yeah. I'm like, I know a number of people around town who I can recommend to you who, you know, might like this kind of project. But I'm like, if you're coming to me and you're telling me what to make, then I'm usually not going to go for it.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite collab or project this year or something you really enjoyed?
Well, I did these acorns for Omakase room. That was like a pleasure and pain kind of thing. Like, I feel like all of pottery is, where it's like amazing to push the practice forward and do something to really challenge yourself. But then, excuse me, but then it's like you're on the schedule. And if you don't hit the mark the first time, then you have to remake the whole thing. And you have to do it even faster than you did the last one because they're waiting. And so, like, they were really cool about it. I don't want to make it sound like they were a difficult client. They were not. Like, I put all that pressure on myself. I mean, and the chef there, Chef Kaze, he was just joking with me when I, like, delivered them. And he was like, oh, it took like a year or something. I was like, Jesus. I was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like unwrapping them. And he's like, and then when I unwrapped them and showed him one of the pieces, he was like, oh, holy shit. He's like, I better like make something nice to put in this. And I was like, okay, phew. Like, now I can exhale. It's not even that I thought I did a good job. I was just like, it's just like, oh my God, what a relief. Like, he doesn't hate it, you know? But they're these acorns where there's just like a lid and it has a lot of textured detail and it has a little stem, and there were a number of them, and we did probably 5 or 6 different stem designs. So when you look around the room when you're eating there, you can see all the different stems, and it's a very naturalistic kind of look. And this is a very traditional Japanese glaze. It's called temoku. It's very high in iron, and it comes out to this lovely, shiny, dark amber. And like when you have more details like that, it kind of breaks on the edges, and it emphasizes the texture details that you've put into it. And so they wanted 2 sizes. They wanted like a chawanmushi size, and then they wanted a broth size, and they wanted 1 set of lids for all of the bottoms. And so all the lids have to fit all the bottoms. And I work with porcelain, and one of the inherent qualities of porcelain is that it warps. It's just something that happens. It's not something that is a flaw of the material. It is an intrinsic quality to the material. And it is something that should be celebrated. But when you're making a project where the pieces have to fit, it's very challenging. You basically just have to overmake. And I remember I had just finished this project, and I don't know, it's just like when you make a certain volume of goods to get a smaller number of deliverables, it makes you feel like you're like, oh man, I've been doing this for a long time. Am I even good at this? And like, I was in New York, and I was in this line for a halal cart, and I met this guy in the line. It was a long line. He worked at American Standard, which is a toilet company, and porcelain.
The like toilet company.
Okay.
Yeah. Not a Kohler man, I see.
Yeah. I'm more of a Toto guy, but
Oh, yeah, bi Asian. Yeah. But yeah, I met this guy in line, and he was on like the technical team for American Standard, and I was like, so do you like work with porcelain on a regular basis? And like, I was just chatting him up, and he was like, yeah. I was like, I'm a porcelain artist, and he's just like, wow, it's so random. And I was like, so please tell me. I'm like, is there like where you guys fire? Is there just like a huge landfill outside where there's just warped toilets? Where you just have to throw the toilets that just warped in the firing? Because they are porcelain.
Yeah.
Because again, porcelain is very durable. It's not absorbent at all, and that's why toilets are made out of them. It's extremely sanitary. And so like I was like, is there a landfill? And he's like, oh my God, yeah.
what?
And I was
So
like,
affirming.
wait, so like you still have a problem with this at an industrial scale? I was like, you didn't alter the material in order to like increase the success rate.
Right.
And he was like, no, that is a quality that is intrinsic to the material. And so that's part of what makes the material like why we choose it.
Yeah.
So like we're not going to do something that changes that, but there is a certain loss rate, and like warpage is just a part of it. And like, it's not something that I was like, yeah. So like, do you guys ever try to control? He's like, you can't. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. I'm just like, whoa.
I love that. I have a quick question. 2 questions. One, is there no way to break it and reuse that? Like,
That's what I was wondering.
because like,
No.
oh wow. So once it's
Yeah.
glazed and finished, it's done, and you can't. But at least it
Yeah.
turns back to earth at some point, right?
Yeah, you can pulverize it
Right.
and do other things with it if you want. I mean, you could turn it into grog if you know like a clay manufacturer or something. But yeah, a lot of the industrial scale manufacturers are quite wasteful. Like a lot of them don't
Interesting.
even like recycle clay and reuse it and stuff. But yeah, once it's fired, it's undergoing like a phase transformation, and so it is irreversibly like transformed from the like malleable clay to the ceramic.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The other question was, what was the food cart that you were at in like?
Oh man, it was one of these overhyped carts that was like across from Radio City Music Hall. I think it was
I
like
just
right
watched
near
a
there.
video on
The best halal
the
food
best
cart.
halal
Oh, God.
cart. And it was like 2 to 3 hour wait sometimes on this.
Yeah,
one
we
place.
waited for like over an hour because we were there for a wedding, and there was like some sort of scheduling thing where Jack and I were just like, oh, we need to kill some time right now.
Okay.
And this was like near our hotel. And so we were like, let's just wait in this line. And then we met these guys, and they ended up being really cool. And we just talked for an hour. And then we got
In the line?
Yeah.
That's the
And-
best part
yeah.
about waiting in line in restaurants.
Yeah.
And, right? Like every time we've been in line somewhere in Rome or here in the stateside, it's just like,
So random. Rome.
yeah, the Enzo.
Weird flex.
I just saying, like, it's always interesting to
Yeah.
have conversation with people that are willing to wait for food. Like, there's
Yeah.
always a common
Especially
denominator
that
somewhere.
connection.
Yeah,
I feel
there
like
you
that's
go.
very,
That
very
it just
random.
felt like it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Because I was like,
That was a lesson,
I
too.
really need, I just
needed to
need
know that.
this.
The words of
that.
encouragement from a toilet manufacturer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, his job sounded really cool though. Like
Yeah.
the lab and they had like a fab lab and stuff. They did like 3D printing. They had CNC machines. It sounded awesome. I was just like, okay, can I like visit you at work?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, did you get his contact
I
information?
didn't.
We're gonna find him. If you were at a halal cart on August,
Yeah,
No, that's awesome.
They had like spicy rice there, and they were like, "Oh yeah, get the spicy
Okay, this
rice."
is
And I
it.
was like, "I don't like the spicy rice."
Oh no. Okay, so I saw the cart on Esther Choi's episode of Heat Eaters, and so I'm like, is this what she's talking about? So I don't know the name of it,
I don't remember.
but
the
it's a
name of
big
it
deal
either.
right now, and I guess
Yeah.
like everyone's TikToking about that particular cart,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Did you have the spicy rice?
I didn't. No, I watched it.
Okay.
Esther Choi's
Yeah.
YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like red. It has just like.
Was it not good?
I wish I'd gotten the regular rice. It was
Okay.
fine. It was
Yeah.
fine. It was just.
Too much.
I was like, I don't know. But then it's like these places get overhyped, and then you have to wait a while, and then it's like.
Yeah,
Maybe
this-
they are good,
Yes.
but then
The
it's
pressure.
like, is it
Yeah.
ever gonna live up to the expectation of an hour plus
Yeah.
in line?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, it's just kind of, maybe it's unfair, but I was like, this is fine.
Yeah.
This is
I mean,
fine.
yeah.
I got what I really needed emotionally
Yeah,
from the heart.
absolutely. You just like get out of line after you're like not worth it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm good now. I'm good. Yeah.
So I know you said that running a business is hard. Can you talk to me more about being a business owner and a creative person and how those worlds like
Yeah.
kind of collide?
It's hard. It's tough. Like,
Have you had any wins? Like just
yeah, I mean,
Recently?
I did a solo show this summer, and that was really an amazing experience. And as someone who doesn't have a background in art, I don't think I really understood what a big deal that was to like be asked to do that and not have to like apply for something or be juried, and then like to just have the whole show to myself too. I think like most people do group shows before they ever can do a solo show, and so like it was a really amazing exercise in saying like, okay, what grouping of objects do you want to put together, and then what is the intention behind this, and then what is the story that you want to tell. And it really gave me an opportunity to reflect on my practice and why I make the things I make, why I made all the choices I made this year, which I did a lot of atmospheric firing this year. It was just amazing to have that kind of be built into my work schedule, because it's something that I would have to set time aside to do, because I'm just like grinding most days. I'm just like, okay, what is probably going to sell the best next cycle, and like trying to make that as fast as possible. Whereas, the opportunity to show work that I had made as part of my own personal interests and like where I want my practice to go, that felt really distinct from my daily life.
Yeah.
And so like, I think it was a win in the sense that it was like really clarifying for me to understand where I want to go, and kind of, it's going to help me make strategic decisions about how I want to structure my business. Like, maybe I want to make things a little bit easier for, I have a studio assistant, like maybe I want to make things a little bit easier for her to replicate, or put in systems so that she can just create things and there is no difference between what I create and what comes out of that. And that would be like maybe a more, something that would be happening in the background. And then I would have a little bit more time to think about identity, history, intention, like food and drink culture and object culture, and, craft collections, around that, and not necessarily to produce at a mass level, but as an exercise in examining ideas behind like clay and art and food and culture, because I think that that's what really interests me the most. But yeah, the practical challenges of making money from selling pots is like a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
And it's they don't collide very easily.
How did you end up? This is the More Than Tea.
Oh,
at
yeah,
Color Club. So
yeah.
how did you end up choosing tea and tea vessels to be?
Well, I got really into tea last year. Jack, my partner, he's Chinese, and he saw that I was getting into tea, and I was drinking a lot of Chinese tea and Taiwanese tea, and he bought me a gaiwan, which I was like, wow, it shows a lot of confidence, because I'm like, you bought me a ceramic piece. I was like, why did you get this? Like, I was like, I couldn't make this, and ultimately, it was a really great lesson for me because I wasn't familiar with the vessel. It wasn't something that I used, and he got me a really nice one. It was like, now that I know how to make the piece, it's like my favorite gaiwan because it's perfectly weighted at the bottom. It has 3 pieces. I prefer a saucer, so you can have a cup and a lid, and the saucer is kind of optional, but I like a saucer. And it's glazed in this beautiful hare's fur glaze, which is a traditional like Chinese glaze that's fired in like a gas atmosphere, and it creates these striations like across, like where it pools, and it looks like hairs kind of. But it's like he got me a blue one. There's a lot that are kind of like more amber and black or darker colors, but it's a very traditional glaze that was used in historic pots that were made usually like Sung Dynasty is when they really like got super hot and popular. But they did that because they used to drink powdered tea. And so when you froth the tea, it was kind of like matcha, but there would be, they always said it was a white foam that would come on top. And so that's why they developed this whole like family of really dark glazes. It was to create a visual contrast for the drinker, so that the foam would like pop in the vessel. So
I really love all of the intention and attention that you give to the vessel, and not just thinking about what you're eating, but what you're eating, like what surrounds the food.
Right.
I mean, and like there's so much of what you're making has a temperature, and maintaining that heat, like those elements. It's so beautiful. And I feel like there are things that like, obviously I care about, like, oh, why is my ramen cold? But I like don't think about,
Yeah, it might be cold because the vessel is too shallow and too wide.
Yeah, sometimes when I see a dish, or even when I taste it, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And we'll be talking about it, like what could change? I'm like, I think the plate just needs to be black or dark. Because it's like, maybe it's like washing out the dish. So it's interesting to hear about like those contrasts.
Yeah, and like to even think that, how long ago did the Sung Dynasty fall? Like, I don't know, like 1200 something. Like, they were already at a point where they were thinking about food and drink pairings with just the aesthetic quality of the ceramic good, and to know that there were people who cared about that that long ago, and how long there have been people caring about that is just, I don't know, it makes me feel connected somehow. And so, the tea show, it was called More Than Tea, A Geography of Longing. And I feel like that really encapsulated my feelings towards, like to a certain extent, I don't understand why I do this. Like, I don't know why I am doing this. And to the intensity which I take it to. And I think part of it is because, I'm Asian American growing up in this country. And my parents were really cagey about why we immigrated here. Like, people would ask me all the time when I was growing up, like, oh, what made your parents come to America? And I would ask them, and they just wouldn't. They would be like, we don't talk about that. And I was like, okay. I mean, and they talk about it now, and it's really not a big deal. It was just that, like, my dad had a business that failed, and I I think that they just didn't really feel like they wanted to, I don't know, they were more interested in American culture than Thai culture. And like, it was just a number of things that seem really benign to me, make a lot of sense. But it did create for me like this hole, you know, where I was just like, I don't have access to this. And, you know, there's certain ways that, you know, maybe they want to leave Thailand behind that make me feel a little bit boxed out from the Asian side of my identity. And so, like, exploring, you know, like ceramic traditions that are interesting to me in the continent, and working with porcelain, which is like a clay that my ancestors used. Like, over 50% of people in Thailand have Chinese heritage, and that includes my family. And so, like, I feel like there's some kind of connection that I viscerally feel between these traditions and myself. And, like, I'm just like, am I trying to fill up this hole right now? Like, what's happening?
I love that. I think there's a lot of us that like feel like this is like for you, it just sounds like a way that you're reconnecting with a little bit of who you are. And a lot of us that have been like kind of removed from our quote unquote homelands, right? Like even with us and Perilla, and what we're doing is reconnecting with that culture and that heritage, and rediscovering a little bit about who we are through this process. So
yeah, but do you ever feel like you're creating an imagined place in your mind that doesn't exist in real life? I mean, because to me, that's what the longing piece is about. It's like, you know, as someone who's disconnected from an entire part of my identity, I have these sort of fantasies or maybe idealizations about what that might look like based off of what I get to choose that I'm drawn to visually, emotionally, like symbolically. And so sometimes I'm just like, okay, this is a really nice exercise, but is this all like an imagined culture?
I think to me that what you're saying, it reminds me of like third culture and
Yes.
kind of that realm. Like I remember being a kid, so I'm adopted. If you didn't know, I have white parents in Minnesota, and we would always talk about like this scale of like you're Korean and you're American, and like where do you fall? And like as an adoptee, like everything I've learned about Korea has been through books or through people. And like it has been this huge, like, not that I was boxed out. My parents did such a good job of connecting me to my culture, but it is an interesting idea. I always imagined there'd be like an island halfway between Minnesota and Korea, and like all the adoptees, like as I remember being a 13-year-old and being like, all the adoptees should live there, and we can eat Korean food and like rice whenever we want. We can do, because you're connecting in different ways. And I think having been raised in America too, like maybe you're noticing things about Thai culture that people in Thailand don't notice, or things like that too. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you don't have to just say it's not Thai or it's not American, but it's just an encapsulation of who you are.
Right. Yeah. And I'm always like careful to tell people too that this is like a reflection of my lived experience, and that it's not necessarily a portal into a world that exists today. That, you know, like I think about Thailand today, and it's like I go there and people are very welcoming to me, and it's great, but like it's just like different. It's just different from what I imagined it to be. And yeah, like I just think that everyone's lived experience is valid, and like however, like if you're an artist especially, like how you want to parse that and interact with that, I think is going to be valid as long as you're respectful and, you know, appreciating and pushing yourself to learn. But yeah, I still don't really understand what I'm doing, because it's like, I think about Thailand, and you know, it's not like I'm upset that my parents immigrated. Like, I just want to be clear too that like there are certain laws in Thailand. Like there's certain, like I am 100% Thai, but when I go there, people can tell that I'm not Thai by the way I carry myself.
The clothes that you wear,
I don't have to
accent.
say anything.
right.
Yeah.
I don't have to say anything. They know that I'm not, you know, they're like, oh, okay, are you like half? Or I'm like, no. Like, I'm not half. But yeah, it's just, they can tell. And there's, you know, you can't say anything negative about the royal family. Like, you'll get thrown into jail. It has like the most intense and punishing lèse-majesté laws in the entire world. Sentences have been decades long.
Wow.
And so, there's like not free speech the way that there is here. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to be the person that I am today because there's certain expectations for women to fall into, and I can be who I am without being on the margins of society. So like, there's all this like push and pull, right? Because there's like, I want to participate with my culture in a certain way, or like even as it goes farther and farther back, and how do I look at the continent as how it pertains to my identity, even though I'm not, like, at this generation in my family, we're not ethnically Chinese anymore,
Yeah.
But that concept in Thailand is also very different. It's like, if you're considered half Thai, it means that you're half an ethnicity that is not Chinese. So if you're ethnically half Chinese and culturally Thai, you're not considered half.
Right.
Like there's
Yeah.
just an exception in the culture for that.
Uh-huh.
And so that's something that's just been really intriguing to me this year as I delve into like pottery history and like, I'm more drawn to like Chinese traditions than Thai traditions. Like, what is that about? And then, just kind of understanding that that's being mirrored back to me kind of in like part of my own cultural history. It's just really weird. And like, I've just kind of gone through these rabbit holes where I'm like buying all these books about like the history of the melting pot that's Bangkok, and like this hidden history in China of the decline of the Qing dynasty. And like, I don't know why I'm so attracted to all these different pieces of information, but I feel really strongly that I need to consume them and synthesize them and create a body of work around it. And I just don't understand why I feel that way, or why I feel that that's like what I have to do. But that's like the whole art piece to it, I guess, is that's like what I want to be driven to do is that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I got to make money too. So like,
I love that.
How are you balancing that, like the tradition and like the technique of the past with like today and what the market looks like and what people want?
That's a good question. Like, I feel like there's a certain amount of education that I need to provide to people in order to get them to see the work the way I see it. To say like, I think this is cool because, or I found out this thing about, when you combine plum blossoms and bamboo and pine together, that the three of those are a specific motif called the Three Friends of Winter, and it's trees that can all thrive in the harshest of winters. And it's a hope and perseverance symbol that is used very frequently in Chinese art. And, that's something where if I combine those trees together on a plate, like no one's going to know how cool that is unless I talk about it.
Totally.
But yeah, and like even talking about like wood firing and saying like, hearing people come to the show and look at the work and say, these colors are really interesting. How did you choose these on the outside? And I'm just like, I didn't. Like, this is just how the wood ash rushed through the kiln and stuck to the pot. And you can see the path of the flame hitting one side of the pot and then it rushing behind. And you can actually feel the difference where the ash hits the pot because it becomes glaze. It's a natural glaze. And then, that gets vitrified into like a normal pot, but then you can see where it didn't hit. And I mean, this is still vitrified too. It's like, I shouldn't keep saying vitrified because it has a very...
I like it because I don't know what it means, so...
It has a very like precise...
Vitrified.
It has a very precise definition that I'm not like quite using it right now. But you can feel the difference in the weight between one side of the pot and the other side of the pot. It's so weird to me. But yeah, it's just the way that the pot interacted with the kiln for that firing, for that instance, and people are like, oh, I saw that this wood fired piece is sold out. Can I like sign up for a wait list? And I'm like, I can't recreate this if I tried. Literally every wood-fired pot is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's not something that you can recreate. It is just, a snapshot of nature and time. And, like, that's what makes it so cool.
Yeah.
But when someone sees a pot, they're just like, oh, how'd you get the blue on that side? That's my job is to, like...
The education piece.
Yeah, and so... and this is a really old process too. And so I think it's really cool that people are still doing it, and I want to participate in that. And there's just something about learning about different techniques and processes and then trying them myself or learning about different forms and then making them myself. It's like I have to participate. I don't know why.
I must learn.
I know you've talked a little bit about different firing techniques. I think there was atmospheric firing you mentioned earlier. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so atmospheric firing is just like a whole family of firing techniques. One of them is wood firing. I did 3 different types this year. I did wood firing, I did pit firing, and I did gas firing. So an atmospheric firing is one like where you're creating, like, I don't want to say this because it doesn't apply to pit firing, but to wood firing and like gas firing, you're creating a reduction atmosphere. And so what that means is you're literally reducing the amount of oxygen that's in the kiln. But kilns are not, like vacuums. They're not perfectly sealed from the outside. So like that atmosphere is wanting to come to equilibrium. And so it's wanting to grab oxygen from anywhere it can. And so what it does is it grabs oxygen off of the pots. So there's oxides that you mix into glaze. And like, especially with iron, it'll like the atmosphere is looking for oxygen and it like pulls it off of the glaze that's in the pots. And so you're getting a randomized surface based off of the pot being in that reduction environment. And so that's another sort of like, this is a once in a lifetime thing. It's like if there's cool flashing somewhere or like a nice like little detail on a pot, I can't always recreate that in an atmospheric firing, but that's why we all should love atmospheric firing is because if you're going to buy something that's handmade from a person, don't you want it to be completely unique?
Right. I've got a question. So in like your kind of research into the craft, especially going like back into the, the early ages of like where China was really producing a lot. Is there a term that's similar to wabi-sabi in Chinese? Is there a word? Do you know? And for anyone that's listening that doesn't know what wabi-sabi is, it's essentially perfectly imperfect, like being one of a kind, like not being so uniform.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's a connection back to nature that nothing is a straight line, right? It's like...
or like perfectly imperfect is a nice way to put it. And that's a Japanese term. And I think what's interesting about its history with pottery too is that like, have you ever seen a pot with like a notch in the foot, like a little piece cut out of the foot?
Oh, no.
Usually there's like a little triangle or sometimes it'll be like 3 cuts or something like that. But that was like one of the earlier terms, like that was one of the earlier sort of perceptions of, I think, wabi-sabi in Japan with pots, because in feudal Japan, potters would have to create pots for their feudal lord, and they wouldn't be able to sell any of their pots unless they were imperfect. And so they would do things like notch the feet and like just to be like, oh, well, look, there's a little crack out of this foot. And so, or like, we'll sell the pieces that are, and then those pieces became more desirable in ways because of their imperfection. But in Chinese, like, I don't think that there's, not that I know of, a word that is similar. But yeah, the history of ceramics in China is very different than in Japan because of the export culture around especially blue and white wares in China.
Right.
And like a lot of blue and white and a lot of porcelain too. It was very classist. So you would only really use porcelain if you were living in the imperial court, or if it was being exported to like Europe or the Middle East, like, you know, what was Persia. And you can see in some museums around the world that there are excavated landfills of broken ceramics where when they're not perfect, they would break them so that other people couldn't have them. So, yeah, it's pretty fucked up. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like you go to a museum and you see a vase in a glass case, and it's considered like a prime example of Ming Dynasty era, like craftsmanship. And there's a huge seam line in the vase that I can see, and that the vase is also slumped a little bit. So that's something that I'm very interested in terms of like Chinese history and culture, is like, what did they consider a flaw? And like, how is that different from today? But yeah, I mean, I think about, you know, the imperial history of porcelain all the time and whether or not that taints the material to some degree. But like, for me, I think about, in the United States anyway, people creating handmade pottery, and it's always going to be more than mass manufactured goods. And so it all kind of becomes this level playing field where it's like, okay, all of it's going to be like a little bit more expensive. But the fact that porcelain is in the mix, I kind of like that there's like an equal access part of it that didn't used to exist. So I think, you know, there's a couple interpretations that I would find to make sense, and one would be to not use it, to shun the imperial past, and one would be to kind of reappropriate it, which is what I'm choosing to do, because I love the quality of porcelain. I love the material, and you know, glazes show up so nice on it. There's a clarity of message that is intrinsic to porcelain that I think is unique. So anyway, I don't know if you wanted to know all that.
No, I love it. Is there any like current day inspirations, maybe surprises, like something that inspired you that you were surprised by? Or is it usually through history and reading?
I mean, clay is like always in dialogue with me with food and drink, and so like tea. But that wasn't, I don't know if that was surprising to me, but I mean, maybe it was, because I got really into tea. I started a gung fu practice on my own, which is drinking tea in the gaiwan, like I described earlier. And I just didn't even think twice about incorporating that into my clay practice. Like, I immediately started trying to make the vessels and talking with people who consumed tea that way, and, you know, what size cups are good, and, you know, learning that there's actually a great tea shop in, I think, is it University Village? It's like on Taylor, just like east of Ashland. It's called Living Water Tea House, and you can drink tea this style there. And you know, when you come in, Xiaolong, the owner, is always like, "Oh, did you bring your own cup?" But there's that element of the culture to it, which is that like you should have a cup that speaks to you, and like even when you go out and drink tea, like you should be able to take that with you too. But yeah, I think when I looked back at the body of teaware that I had made, there was a point where I was like, I did not think twice about keeping this sacred or separate from my work.
Yeah.
I'm like, why was that? I don't know. But I think, when I had that thought, I was like a little surprised. I was like, maybe I should think about that more in the future.
I do think it's like helpful that you love to eat, because I don't know, I feel like sometimes, I don't know who's making these like manufactured plates, but some of them are so terrible. And for you to like enjoy food so much and be able to go out to eat and just like we look at service, I'm like constantly being like, oh, that's interesting that they did that. I'm sure you're like, oh, this is interesting how like the plate is shaped.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I think it makes it easy for R&D.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, that's like, as I'm going through my practice and like thinking about how I want like next year to look and everything too, it's like R&D to me is in like this product category where it's like, okay, these are going to be the products. And then like, there's going to be a separation between that and art.
Yeah.
But I think as a 1.5 person pottery company, like, it's like I have to figure out, how to balance those two things. And like, what I would hope is that people would recognize that the products are available to buy, and like that's an easy way to support the practice. Because what I hope too is that people don't see just products. That the question isn't like, oh, this bowl is more expensive than that other bowl. It's, what is this person adding to the landscape that I see as a reflection of how I want this world to look? This is the world I want to live in. Do I want to support this practice? Do I think that this has merit to keep going? And then what room do I have to support the practice? Not, is this an expensive bowl? It's like,
Yeah.
I love that.
That's such a good mindset of like investing in your life, right? And it just doesn't mean like learning and going to work, but it's also like invest in like the things that make you happy, like all of it.
yeah, how
Even
you
from a
want to see
business
the
owner.
world, how you want to exercise your values, like what you think has merit, like support the arts.
I love that.
That actually answers I think this is a good time to transition into our Instagram listener questions.
Oh,
and I think we kind of answered one just now from Chandler, but I'll give you opportunity to, if there was anything else you wanted to say. One of the questions was, what are some not as obvious benefits to buy from a small business opposed from the mass produced?
I love that.
Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Oh, just that when you buy from small business, your money stays in the local economy. So, your dollars are going right back into your community.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's all I want to add to that.
Oh yeah. Support small business.
Hell
for sure.
yeah.
We had another listener question that I think you started to touch on R&D from Chromatoski. I'd love to hear about your hopes for your practice in 2024.
Oh, I know this listener or commenter. This is Kate. Like what I was talking about, which is like trying to just make more room for thinking and processing information and inspiration. I just feel like there's a backup of there's just a backup of input, I guess. And I don't really know what to do with it, but I think it's because I spent all this time trying to do firings outside my kiln this year that I've been, my curiosity has been piqued, and there's just so much information I want to consume, and I don't know where it's going to lead me, but I would hope that I would get to explore that. And so that would involve sort of like creating a production system that maybe I don't have to be as involved in, just because I don't want to spend, my life throwing plates.
We have another question from Leilani Joe. How can I tell if a piece is durable enough for everyday use?
Do you know this person? Is this a restaurant question?
It is a restaurant question.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say for home use, it's like a little bit different than, because home use, it's like up to your preference. It's like if you know that you're not very careful, you don't like to hand wash things, like don't buy thin stuff, But for restaurants, I get this question all the time when I work with restaurants. It's like, oh, is this durable? And then, I go into how amazing porcelain is. And there's a certain durability to it, but then it's like the thickness has something to do with it too. So if you want to bang your dishes around and you're a restaurant ordering, like I would probably just say ask for it to be thicker.
Okay.
But also Yeah, I was working with a restaurateur who was ordering from a couple other artists around the world, and he was showing me pictures of certain wares, and I was like, oh, that's like not food safe, and that's not food safe. And so it's hard to say, but like you just have to, like, I don't know if you can tell without having that kind of education. But, you know, raku pots, for example, it's a really nice atmospheric technique where you you take something out of the kiln hot and you like plunge it in a barrel and then you put stuff around it. Like you can put horse hairs on it. It looks really good. But the clay never gets to its maturation level. And so like, that's kind of where I'm going with this too, is that if you don't make your own clay, you're buying clay. And then you buy it based off of the temperature that you want to fire it to. And like when it doesn't get to that temperature, it's just going to be weaker. And so like a raku fired pot never really gets to its maturation temperature. And then it's going to be porous. And so then when you have people washing it, and you know, you could get mold, like growing it because it's like seeping in there. And then it's not completely drying. And then there was like some other step where like, I don't know, I don't want to say that I like disapprove of certain things because I feel like I see places using these. I see artists that I like and respect like doing these things, but it's like, I would never make something that looked like it was cracked, like a big thick layer of cracked glass on the bottom of a plate or something. Because then the cracks create like opportunities for mold and stuff to grow too. But it's like, it has to do with like your mileage on it. It's like, are you willing to deal with this? Or, and so like in some ways it's like everything is durable, and other ways it's like, there's all these like little technical details.
Interesting.
But yeah, if you're buying from someone, I would say, what kind of clay are you using? Like what cone is it supposed to be fired at? Are you firing it to that cone, which is a reference for temperature? But like, I think what's interesting to me is that there's like a lot of people who fire to cone 6, which is mid-fire. And I fired a cone 10 because I know I want to work with restaurants and that I know I'm going to buy my clay too. I'm not going to make it myself. Sure. But there has been some like independent research done by like some people in the ceramic field crowdsourcing information about different clays. And like when you buy cone 6 clays that are rated cone 6 from clay companies, it's not the fault of the artist, but like a lot of these clays don't come to maturation at 6. They actually mature at 10.
Oh, interesting.
So then they're not like as durable.
Right.
Because like people are buying the clay and they're like, oh, well, it says 6 on here. It should be maturing at 6. But then, you know, the independent research shows that it's like not maturing until it's at 10. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, I don't know, is that like inside baseball kind of stuff? It's like, it doesn't really matter that much. Like,
Just buy from monsoonpottery.com. Leilani.
Yeah. And I just wanted to give some shout outs to Jessica and to Brandon, who also had questions. I think we covered a lot of them, though, with the wasabi. Oh my gosh, wasabi. Wabi-sabi. We're going to go into a game quick. Or it's an easy game. It's this or that. So the idea is that there are quick fire questions, just whatever comes to mind first, this or that. All right. So eating out or eating at home?
Eating at home.
Travel to Asia or travel to Europe?
Asia.
Rice or noodles?
Why are you doing this?
I know.
Both.
No, what?
Yes. No. Probably rice.
Okay. Singing or dancing?
Dancing.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Ask for permission or ask for forgiveness?
Oh, man. Ask for forgiveness.
Okay. And
That's what that means. A long pause on that question means forgiveness.
Sure.
Like, can I get away with this?
pit fire or wood fire?
Wood fire.
Ooh.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love
pit
it.
fire is not food safe. So I always go with the food safe option.
Which is wood fire.
Yes. Yes.
So that's for you, Leilani. Wood fire will be a question that you ask. And then we have one more closing question. advice you would share with your younger self?
Oh, how young are we talking?
Let's say, how long are we talking? That's
I
a
don't
great
know. That's the
question.
first time we've been asked
you
that.
messed us up.
Yeah, I think just like
Whenever.
Yeah,
If
whenever.
you have a specific age, like I would have
Yeah.
told 12-year-old me,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, I think before
you're
the
the
whole
most
college
impressionable.
process
Yeah.
and everything, I would have told myself, you're going to do whatever you want anyway. So don't waste time trying to figure out what other people want you to do.
I love that.
Love that.
Yeah, it took me long enough.
Okay. Thank you so much, Danielle. I'm just going to go over some information on how people can find you. Your Can I share your personal Instagram?
Oh, no, don't share
Nah.
the personal one. I never post on that
Don't have
one.
access, guys. Sorry.
There's just nothing on it.
Yeah. I'm all like creeping it. You can find her on Instagram at Monsoon Pottery. And then the website will also be monsoonpottery.com. And then email will be danielle@monsoonpottery.com. And is that everywhere? That's where everyone can buy your pieces is online?
Yeah. Yeah, everything that's available is online. I don't really do small commissions, but if you have a commission in mind that's over $1,000, I will consider it.
Awesome. And are you shipping across the country? Are you shipping overseas?
I am shipping within the U.S. now. I have one client in Australia that I ship
cool.
to regularly. So I would say I'm working on getting international shipping on my website. But if you're international and you're interested in the work and you email me about it, I will absolutely figure out a way to get it to
I
you.
love that. And we just learned that they pronounce it Straya.
Straya.
Straya. That's how they say Australia over there.
Oh, really?
Straya.
It's Straya.
Try it out. Try it.
Shout out to your customer out there.
That's cool. Yes.
And then we have our sponsor beverage from Cocktail Collective. It is a lychee teeny with Kyoto pink gin, Apolog Aronia berry liqueur, lime lychee syrup, and jasmine rose tea.
Ooh.
So shaken, served up, and then garnished with a lychee. So it does not come with the lychee. So we're gonna have to
Okay.
find you a lychee.
I'll just get one of those fun cans.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Oh my
We're
God,
so
thank
excited.
you
you.
for having me.
We're gonna have to chat more because there's a lot that I want to know still.
That'll be in the exclusive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.